There is nothing worse than untapped potentials. If you know that you're made for more, this is the place. I know that every successful person I've ever met has one thing in common. They do not let themselves fall victim to their circumstances. They figure out a way to rise above it. So join me on this journey where I help you to be better, do better, and have better in life and in business. If you're feeling stuck and you're needing some practical tools, some hope to get you to that better life, this is definitely the place for you. Everybody, welcome to the Unstuck Podcast. I am your host, lachellewieme, and you guys, today we get a chance to chat with Shanenn Bryant, who is a life coach and kind of a little celebrity in my book. She is the host of the Top Self Podcast, and so it's so fun to have other podcasters on my show, Shanenn, because you bring so much amazing insight, and I cannot wait for our audience to get a chance to learn from you, to be inspired by your story, and really honestly, all the hope and practical tools that you're going to have to help us get unstuck. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be here and a great introduction. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that honestly, as best as I could do, you're going to do a way better job, Shanenn. So I want you to just give us an idea of who you are and really honestly how you're trying to serve people in the world today.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate that. So I was in the corporate world, have been in the corporate world for a long time as a corporate trainer. And so I worked on training and development of employees. And that kind of led me to getting into the life coaching space to really help and serve others. And I'm sure we'll get into it a little later, but I am an ACA, or adult child of alcoholic. And so I spent many, many years where I had low self-confidence, low self-esteem. And so I really didn't want anyone else to go that long not achieving their goals and their dreams. So I did a lot of hard work, a lot of self-awareness and self-management, and I was able to kind of come on the other side of that. And I really just want to help other people and trying to do that through life coaching. And then of course, my podcast.
Yes. That's how you and I just connected so much, right? Because we both have this common, real, true to life passion of helping people get from where they are to where they want to be. And I think that oftentimes our biggest enemies are ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think both of us have lived that life where we've been our own enemy. And it's like, no, I want better for others. I want my pain to serve someone else. And I just really think that you're making a really big difference in the world. So thanks for everything that you're doing. And I would love for you to, if you're willing, kind of give us a little bit of a behind the scenes insight to who Shanenn you are and what led you down this path of helping people in the way that you do.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I grew up in a pretty chaotic environment, having a father who is an alcoholic, and there are just so many challenges and characters or behaviors that come with living and growing up in that type of environment. And I spent many years just really struggling in relationships, in my career, and I always knew that I wanted more, I wanted to achieve more, but I just didn't have that confidence to really go out and get it. And so it's really just putting in some hard work and finally realizing like, okay, wait a second. I don't have to let the past be my future. I don't have to live in that. And just because that's where I came from, that's how I grew up, I can change those things. I can change the way that I think. I can change those behaviors. And so I worked really hard at that and tried to kind of lift myself to realize my self-worth and go after what I wanted to accomplish and achieve. And I think, learning something new, learning a new skill, especially like self-awareness and self-management, can really catapult you into growing that emotional intelligence and being able to go out then and conquer things that you knew. And I think we all have that kind of deep down passion of, I know that I could do this. I just don't have the confidence. I'm a little bit scared to step outside the box. And so I always say, you know, that quote, if you're afraid to do something, you might just have to do it scared.
Yes.
And truly, that's how I've been living for quite a while, is I'm going to do it scared.
Absolutely. That takes a lot of courage, though. It really does, because it's just that first step, right? That gets us to where we want to go. And that step feels like the most ginormous, unachievable step sometimes. And one of the things, Shanenn, that I've noticed in all of the conversations that I've had, books I've read, podcasts I've listened to, that successful people, and I say success as a life well lived by your own definition, right? Really stems from this choice that you want to be accountable for your own life, that you choose to rise above the circumstances instead of being defined by them. And it sounds like that's a decision that you made. Was that an easy decision, or was it something that you struggled with a little bit? Like, what caused you to be a child that had the life that you did to want to make that decision and hold that accountability to your future in your own hands?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. You know, really, as I mentioned, I spent years and years and really not even knowing. And I think that happens to a lot of us, is we just kind of feel like things aren't going well for us, whether it's relationships. I had a ton of bad relationships and always really confused about, is it me? Is it them? Is this something I should be upset about? You know, really questioning and never feeling sure if it's just, that's the way that I am. And I think we often feel that way is, well, that's just the way that I am. That's just who I am. Right. And how I am. And it honestly, and I can't believe I'm going to tell this story, but I'm going to. So my husband and I, when we first, early on when we were dating, we've been together 13 years now, but when we early on dating, it was just, I felt like we were having these relationship issues and I had similar relationship issues in the past. And so, you know, you kind of go, okay, I'm the common thread in this. And so we decided that we were going to go to therapy and try to kind of dig into some of this a little bit. And we actually got kicked out of therapy. That's how bad it was. I think we're probably the only people that have ever been kicked out of therapy, but we were, because we would have the same fight. So we'd have the original argument. We'd go to therapy. We'd have the argument again. And then we'd argue afterwards about anything new that came up in therapy. But what it did show me is, okay, you're just continuing to repeat these patterns. And so when you're seeing something show up time and time and time again in your life, there comes a point where it's like, I need to really look at that and really dive in and see what's going on. And that's really how it came to be.
That's honestly really, really insightful. And I got to just ask you this, because I think it's going to help so many people who can relate to that. When you start to notice those patterns and you're like, wait a minute, the common denominator is me. What's wrong with me? Instead of looking at it like, okay, what a gift that I had this insight that I now can pinpoint like a theme. What can I do about it? Instead, oftentimes we go to, there must be something wrong with me. And then it just brings us down this cycle of self-worth problems and shame and all these things. Can you can you relate to that? Do you see that? Is that anything that you can?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And for the longest time, I think we get stuck in the why. So why is this happening? Why am I this way? Why does this keep showing up for me?
Yeah.
And it truly is kind of changing that why to what. So what are things that are happening over and over again? What things are contributing to this? What is that feeling that I'm having that may be causing these behaviors? And so really changing the why to what, that gives you some steps or some things that are kind of tangible that you can hold on to and go, okay, now I can work backwards into that, because you do start to really, it's almost like that vicious cycle, like you mentioned, where you're starting to feel worse about yourself because, okay, I've kind of identified that it's me, which makes me feel worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But changing that questioning or that thinking from why to what can make a big difference.
Yeah. And I would think that the heaviness of the why question, like, why do I keep doing this and why, do people keep, leaving me, or why do I always sabotage these relationships? Instead of doing a, what can I do? What is going on? It almost brings us out of the emotional heaviness of it and into more of an observer and a detached, emotionally like problem solver, right? Like, okay, well, what can we do? What do we see? And get us into action instead of taking all of that heaviness on ourselves.
Yeah, it really allows you to go into sort of a spectator mode where it's okay. Instead of, as you mentioned, you really get in your feelings.
Right.
And so it's just a way to step out of that and look at it a little bit differently.
Absolutely. And, when you say spectator too, I think that there's something that I've observed that seems to help is when we get into this position where we have enough self-awareness, right? We're like, wait a minute, there's a pattern, and recognizing that there may be things that are triggering certain patterns and certain behaviors. When we can seek out help from somebody that knows what they're doing, that can help be the spectator in our lives to help us say, hey, I also see these patterns, but that doesn't mean that you're broken. I actually see this amazing person that is in front of me that has these qualities. And so let's just work on these few little triggers here and get you out of that. And I think so oftentimes we try to analyze the heck out of it ourselves. And it's really hard for us to see the forest for the trees, right? Because we're so close to it that it's really hard for us to see everything else.
That's right. And we go into that mode, that negative mode. So we're focused on the negative. What's wrong with us? Why are we like this? And a lot of times it's just looking again at things a bit differently. What are your strengths though? Because we all have strengths. Yeah. And especially those that have really went through some challenges in their life, there are many strengths that you can draw from. And so when you're going through personal growth and development, it's like you have to track both of those. Right. Okay. What is not working? But also then what are my strengths too? And I'm going to elevate those strengths and work on them at the same time. Yeah.
And I would think that when you start to see your strengths, you can start to maybe even have the awareness that maybe it's not that there's something necessarily wrong with you, but maybe there's something inside of your subconscious or inside of your triggering, life that has caused you to attract certain people into your life. And that those people are bringing out maybe the worst part of you instead of bringing out the best parts in you. And so when you can start to recognize that, you can start to decide who you want to spend your time with. And so, can you help me, because I think that you have such great insight into this. How do you know when it's you that needs to do the majority of the heavy lifting, or it's just the deciding that maybe you need to not allow yourself to be exposed to certain people or to stop attracting certain people into your life?
Yeah. Well, and that is another piece of it. We tend to attract people that probably aren't good for us, especially if we've got low self-worth, then we're not shooting for the moon in terms of relationships a lot of times, right? We're kind of dealing with what's being given to us. But I will say in any situation, whether it is a great fit for you or not a great fit for you, we should do our own heavy lifting for ourselves and really kind of focus on ourselves. But I know kind of what you're asking is, well, how do I know if I've had 5 bad relationships previously? Was it them? Was it me? And I really think when you have that person that you can talk to about those things, let them know what you're going through and, hey, I'm working on this. Here are some ways that you can support me, not help me, but support me in that. And they're willing to do that. I think that's when you kind of go, okay, this person is willing. They may not understand everything that you're going through or the how it all works. But if they know and they're supporting you in, working on yourself and growing yourself, that's all you can ask for. And I think that's when you kind of know, like, okay. And that's what happened with my husband. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, he maybe should have not stuck around for as long as he did, but he did. So I'm thankful for that.
No, I think it's important that we, really acknowledge that there is, sometimes I think we can have an all or nothing mindset. We either are amazing or we suck. Right?
Yes.
They are amazing or they suck.
Or they suck.
And really, we both are amazing and we both can suck sometimes. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the beautiful thing is when you're working on yourself, it actually causes the other person to kind of elevate their game too. And like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And so then you can share that and grow together versus, and there may be situations where once you've worked through things and okay, this isn't right for me and I'm going to go down another path, and that's fine too. But oftentimes you can grow together in that.
Absolutely. And I think that, when I've seen some people say, I don't have anything wrong with me, I don't have anything to work on, it almost feels like it's less of a confidence thing and more of a fear of really discovering some things that we have to work on. Right. And that what I have found is the more confident that I am, the more I want to work on myself, because I start to discover that there is a diamond in here and I get to shine it up here and there. And I think that being a lover of personal development doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have any self-worth or self-love, but you can actually choose to embrace who you are and refine it and make it even better.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to have these horrendous circumstances in your past to want to grow personally. I mean, that's something, it's so much fun to learn a new skill or learn something new about yourself, or like, oh, that's why that works that way. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, you guys, I am going to get into Shanenn's, more of her story. We're going to get into more just genuine tips, tricks, ways that you can take her story, her expertise, and get from where you are to where you want to be. But first, I can't wait to tell you about something I've been working on. You guys, it has been something that my team and I have been diving into for months now, and we are very, very excited to let you in on our secret. So stay tuned here real quick, and I'm going to tell you all about it. They're going to come back and hear more from Shanenn and all of the amazing inspiration and wisdom that she has to share with us. Hey, Lachelle here, and I just got to ask you, do you ever listen to podcasts or special training from gurus who are telling you exactly what to do, but you still have questions? Wouldn't it be amazing if you actually could ask questions to the people who are presenting to give you your personalized answer to how you can get into action and apply it to your unique situation? That is exactly why I created the Better Club Elite, which is a very special, very exclusive monthly membership that gives you access to those question and answer sessions that are going to get you into action and get you all lined up with everything that you need to start being better, doing better, and having better in life and in business. The support, the answers, and everything that you need to get you into action. So let's go. Okay, you guys, so here we are. We're going to dive into Shanenn's expertise here. And one of the things that we've done is really start to think about what it means to be self-aware, self-improvement, all of the things. And she mentioned emotional intelligence as well, which is a huge part of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. And I geek out on all of this stuff. I think that, when I used to be a professor and we used to admit students into our graduate program, I always looked at emotional intelligence as the primary indicator of whether or not a student had what it took to be in our program, even over IQ. And so when I think about emotional intelligence and self-awareness and all of those things, I think that they tie so beautifully into what we've been talking about, because it's when you start getting that self-awareness and build that emotional intelligence, that's when you can really make giant strides in every area of your life. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the beautiful things about emotional intelligence and self-improvement overall is it's not only good for you personally, but it's great for you professionally as well. Like you said, you're looking at people who, and often it does. It's more important than IQ because we have to get along with people. We have to be able to collaborate with people. And without that emotional intelligence, it makes it hard. So you can know all the things that you need to do, but can we work with others?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So tell people a little bit who are listening who maybe aren't as familiar with the term emotional intelligence. Can you just give us a brief overview of what exactly that is?
Yeah. So emotional intelligence, there are actually 4 categories that kind of go along with emotional intelligence. So there's self-awareness, there is self-management, relationship management, and why am I forgetting the 4th one? Relationship management. Oh, social awareness.
Perfect.
And social awareness is big because that's going to come in certainly into your professional life.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
4 categories. And, 95% of us think that we're self-aware, but in reality, only about 15% of us are. And so there's a lot of work that can be done. It helps to reduce stress, avoid some conflict, and really improve relationships overall. So when you can increase that emotional intelligence, it's just showing you, how can I understand myself and then also be cued in on others around me, what they may be feeling, and then how can I work and interact with them together?
Absolutely. And I would assume that, I don't know the framework as far as like if things are weighted equally, but I would think that it would be a foundational part of emotional intelligence to have that self-awareness. Because if you don't have the self-awareness, it's really hard for you to have social awareness or relationship awareness or any of the other things that we just talked about.
Yes. And actually the self-awareness, it's the foundation for emotional intelligence. Just like anything, we have to start with us, right? So what we can control and starting with us. So yes, self-awareness is where it all begins.
So why don't you, if you would, give us some really tangible things that we can start doing to become more aware of ourselves, so we can learn more about ourselves, so we can learn the things that we need to embrace, things that we maybe need to refine. Where do we start?
Yeah. So one that people may not like that much, but it's really paying attention to what you don't like about someone else or what may kind of bother you about someone else, because oftentimes it's a reflection. So it's probably something that we struggle with or that we may not be perfectly happy with about ourselves. So oftentimes, if someone's across from you and you're really kind of having those feelings, you might want to dig into that just a little bit to see what it is that's rubbing you the wrong way about them. So
that's insightful. Can you give me an example? Because I'm wondering if people just, give me an example of something that somebody might experience.
So I guess I'm thinking potentially in the work environment where oftentimes, or for an example, there may be someone who maybe they are always gossiping or they're constantly kind of talking about someone or kind of fueling the fire, so to speak, on things. That may be where, of course, no one likes someone to gossip and say those things. But if it's really striking you about that person, you might have a little bit of an issue with the gossip side or being negative yourself. And so that might be one example.
That is a great example. So thank you for that. So the first thing is really start to pay attention to the things that are bugging you by the people around you. What other things can we start to use?
One really great one is mindfulness meditation. And I was never that into meditation for a long time, but it is so wonderful. And the thing you want to do when you're doing that mindfulness meditation, especially when it comes to self-awareness, is you're going to have those thoughts, of course, that pop in. So the idea is that you're focusing on your breath. When you have that thought that comes in, whether it's a replay of something that didn't go well that day, or you're feeling stressed out, there's an emotion that's popping up, you're going to do your best to shoo it away as quickly as possible and go back to focusing on your breath. After you practice that for a while, what tends to happen is those events or those pop-ups start to more look like images. And then you're looking at them more again, sort of from that spectator mode. Instead of it's in here and you're dealing with it, you're able to actually see them like a picture and go, okay, that probably didn't warrant my reaction to that. Or gosh, this is something that's repeating again and again that I keep focusing on or keeps popping up. So mindfulness meditation is great, and paying attention to those things that are popping up when you're trying to meditate. So
I've never even thought about that. And I would think that just the mindfulness in general and the breathing can really be a powerful tool if you're finding that there's something that is really triggering an abundant emotional response, right? Extraordinarily greater than what it should. And you catch yourself into the habit of breathing deeply whenever that happens, right? And so then you're finding that, okay, well, I'm deep breathing a lot whenever this happens. And so you start to recognize like, oh my gosh, like that really must bug me more than I ever realized.
Yeah. And
so in that moment,
the great thing is when you've done it often enough, you're able then to do it outside of that meditation as well, much quicker. So even throughout the day, as those negative things pop in, you can actually identify them a lot quicker and go, oh yeah, it's that, or that's what's going on.
I love that. Okay. Any other tools that you have that we can start to bring into our awareness to help our self-awareness?
Okay. So one last one, and this one's really discovering your blind spots. And I describe this as starting to be aware of your focus space. So we all kind of have that sometimes if you're washing dishes, or maybe you're working on something that's intricate. Some of us stick out our tongue. Some of us get a weird look on our face. It's kind of our focus face, right? That we do. And what's funny about that, our blind spots are very similar to that. So we don't even know that we're doing them, but everyone around us, it's so obvious that I'm sticking out my tongue, and you can see that, right? So, discovering your blind spots, a way to do it is get with people who you know that care for you, that want to see you do well, and that you trust will be honest with you. And then just ask them, what are some things that I do that you see me repeatedly do or repeatedly say? And take that feedback, because feedback, anytime you get feedback, it's actually a gift.
Absolutely.
For someone to give you that information. And feedback from someone else is just a fast track to self-awareness.
Yes, 100%. And so many times I think when we struggle with self-confidence or self-worth, it's really, really hard for us to ask for that feedback because we don't want to hear what they have to say.
Yes.
And so I think that the fact that if you guys get to the point where you're willing to ask for that feedback, I want you to celebrate your progress, that you have gotten to the point in your journey where you're willing to face things that maybe you don't want to hear. And one of my friends had to actually just told me, she's like, Lachelle, you just have this way about telling me what I need to hear, but it's wrapped in a hug. Like, she's like, And I think that if you can find people in your life that you know they love you enough to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, but they'll do it wrapped in a hug. Find those people and cherish them, because I think that they're a gift to you. But like you said, it can fast track you to where you want to go. But if the moment somebody gives you some feedback and you get super defensive and you don't want to hear it, or you definitely don't seek it out, it's you trying to protect yourself from the truth. And that is going to only stifle your growth, right?
Yeah. And a lot of times what we do with feedback when we get it is we then start to create additional feedback that's not even there. And so truly the 80 or 85% of the feedback is just what they said, or I'm sorry, 15% of the feedback is just what they said. 85% of the rest of it is usually what we make up from that. So you could say to me, well, you often do this, which doesn't seem very kind. Well, I may take that one thing and go, oh gosh, she just must be upset with me all the time. And I must be on her nerves all the time. And she probably gets annoyed then when I call. So we go down that track of adding more things. And so that's one thing, just to be careful with the feedback is take it for the words that they said and the actual feedback that they gave.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask you this. Is it okay if you ask them questions back? Like, okay, can you give me more information around that? Do I do that all the time? Do I do that? Do you notice that I do that only sometimes? Is it okay for us to ask questions so that we can start to not tell ourselves stories, but really try to get to the meat of what it is that they're trying to say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because that's going to block out some of that too. If you're questioning, or if you start to go down a rabbit hole of additional things, let me just double check. Do you mean only in this event that I do that? Or is this more often than that? So absolutely.
And that is so brilliant. And I've never even really acknowledged it until just now, but it's, you guys, like I've been, guilty of that. I have a very big tendency to go from all or nothing. And that's black and white, all or nothing. And so just like you said, somebody gives me feedback and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do this all the time. Not just some of the time, not just during this circumstance, but I do this all the time. I must be really annoying, or I must be whatever. And then I start to shut down and I stop speaking up, or I stop going to events, or I stop, whatever, participating, because I'm so afraid that it's all the time, instead of saying, oh, this is something that I can fix.
Yeah.
And it's not all the time, and it's not, anything wrong with me. And one of the things I'm working on is I have a very expressive face. And so sometimes I think that you know what I'm thinking before I say it. I'm like, okay, Lachelle, but having the awareness of it though allows me to not inadvertently, there's so many people who roll their eyes, or they, do little things that sabotage, or even it can even be something that is not even, offensive or aggressive. It might even be something that somebody can see in you that is sabotaging your own, the way that other people perceive you, right? Like maybe you have a friend that says, I've noticed that you don't look people in the eye very often. Or I've noticed that, when you're around certain people, you don't stand up straight.
Yes.
That's a gift.
It is. And, that's funny because it reminds me of a story when I first, started out in my career, and I was in meetings. I'm cold all the time. So I'm always like kind of, my arms crossed, I'm bundled up. And someone said to me, you really come across very negative when you're in meetings. And it was the best thing they could have told me.
Yes.
Because I didn't realize that. And, perception sometimes it's important, because I don't want people to feel that way about me. And so it truly was a gift. And so, feedback is wonderful.
Absolutely. Just be brave enough to get it, you guys, and it'll change your life. Right. And so, Shanenn, is there anything else that you haven't had a chance to bring up before we wrap up our conversation? Because I literally have enjoyed this so much. And I think that you're really helping people to really live out their best selves by understanding who their best self is and where they are now, so that we can start to track our progress. Right. And if we don't know where we can start, then how do we really track our progress? And so I just think that how else can you bless us today that we haven't already had a chance to talk about?
I would say the last thing is really learning a new skill. Anytime you can learn a new skill, learn something new, there's something so amazing about kind of that light bulb moment, or, oh, okay, I can connect the dots here. The more that you're learning, the more confident you're going to become just in general. And then that just is a catapult to many other things. So never stop learning. I think that's my biggest thing. That
is amazing. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for us today. And I just am looking forward to continuing to dive into your own podcast. You guys, it's called the Top Self Podcast. And, Shanenn, I always end our conversation with an opportunity for you as a guest to be able to present our audience with a coaching question that you can ask them to ponder between our time today and the next time we meet. And so, I would love to know what question you would have people think about to get them into forward motion.
Ooh, that is a good one. I would love for people to think about their life timeline and think about big events that have happened throughout their life. And even if they take a piece of paper and kind of draw a line, any of those big events that you can remember, and some of that stuff will kind of start to connect. So maybe it's just going back and what were the big events in my life? I'd love to hear kind of people's things that they felt like really kind of changed them or made them a bit different.
I love that. That self-awareness is going to be so powerful, you guys. Shanenn, thank you so much. And we'll make sure that you guys have all of the ways that you can connect with Shanenn inside of the show notes so that you can learn from her more. You can follow her journey and connect her if you want to. So Shanenn, thank you so much for everything. And I will see you guys all next time.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Unstuck Podcast. I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you. And don't forget to check out the show notes if you want to get into my private club, the Better Club, to be able to learn better ways to be better, do better, and have better. So until next time, keep showing up. Let's get unstuck together. Have a great day.